Joining us now and clearly exploring his options, Louisiana Governor Bobby Jindal. Governor, welcome back to Fox News Sunday.
Thank you for having me.
And good to have you here in D.C. Well, you saw, we just put up that graphic of Republican potential candidates. You have a strong record as a governor. You have cut the size of government. You have cut taxes. You have strong economic growth. But there are some other governors who can say the same thing, whether it's Kasich of Ohio or Walker of Wisconsin or Christie of New Jersey. I guess the question I have for you is, how do you stand out from what makes you better than those other guys?
Chris, two things. One, I absolutely agree we have some great governors, and I prefer governors. Governors have done things. We've cut budgets. We have now a former U.S. senator who had never run anything in the White House. Governors have executive experience. If I were to decide to run, this election to me is all about how do we restore the American dream for our children and grandchildren. This president, he has believed in bigger government, redistribution, fewer opportunities, more debt, more taxing, more borrowing.
But forgive me, Walker, Kasich, and Christie could say the same thing. What makes you stand out?
Well, look, you're right. Well, like many other governors, we've done great things in our state. We've cut our budget by 26%. We've grown our private sector economy, a top 5 job creating in the country. We've reformed education, so we've got statewide school choice. But it's more than just what we've done in Louisiana. If I were to decide to run, I think I've got a unique perspective. My parents came here over 40 years ago in search of the American dream. My brother and I have lived the American dream. We've taken on big challenges. We've taken on the entrenched interests. I think the American people are looking for big change in Washington, D.C. Not small change, big change.
All right. After the Republican defeat in 2012, you famously said this.
We've got to stop being the stupid party. And I'm serious. It's time for a new Republican Party that talks like adults.
You said that Republicans cannot be seen as the party that protects the rich and that you have to fight for every vote. So my question is, how have Republicans in the last 2 years reached out specifically, and I don't want you to go into great detail, but to Hispanics and to single women and to young voters where you haven't done so well?
Look, I'd say just 3 quick examples. One, school choice education reform. Kids growing up in poor neighborhoods are often trapped in failing schools. We're reaching out saying we're an aspirational party and an aspirational country. Circumstances of your birth shouldn't determine your outcomes as a Secondly, I put out detailed plans on how do you actually repeal and replace Obamacare with plans that bring down the cost of health care for middle class and other working families. And then finally, third, energy. We believe in energy independence. Through the fracking revolution, we can create 1 million good-paying manufacturing jobs. Median household income would go up 7%. No federal spending and borrowing. We're talking about good-paying blue-collar jobs with benefits. 3 examples where conservative policies help working families in America.
All right. As you know, it's a horse race. I want to put up the latest Real Clear Politics average of recent polls about Republicans for 2016. It shows Jeb Bush leading the Republican field at this point, obviously very early with 14%, Paul Ryan second, Christie third. You're back in 11th place, forgive me, at 2.8%. Realistically, how do you come from so far behind?
Chris, look, if I were to decide to run, it wouldn't be about poll numbers. I was at less than 2% when I first ran for governor. I was within the margin of error. The reality is we've taken on big generational changes. We have transformed our state. For 25 years, we were losing people. 6 years in a row now, we have more people moving into the state. Took 10 charity hospitals. This is the third rail in Louisiana politics. Turned them into public-private partnerships. Substantially, not only cut the size of government 26%, but have grown the private sector economy. This is not about politicians who are popular by kissing babies and cutting ribbons. This election is going to be about big ideas and big change.
Okay, but you mentioned Louisiana. Let's take a look at the exit poll on Election Day in Louisiana. Here was the question. Do you think Bobby Jindal would make a good president? 27% said yes, 69% said no. Governor, these are Louisiana voters. These are the people who know you best.
Well, again, if we took on the entrenched interests like the teacher unions, and you're right, they try to recall me because we reformed tenure and we did statewide school choice. We've got over 34,000 state government employees, 8 credit upgrades. balanced our budget without raising taxes, largest income
so what are you
tax
saying,
cut
that by the time you finish being president, that 69% of Americans will think you didn't make a good president?
I'm saying if you had a president right now that balanced the budget without raising taxes, if you had a president that had grown the private sector economy, we've grown our economy twice as fast as the national economy, 8 credit upgrades, substantial improvements in our public education system, I think that's a record we need here. I think we need fewer politicians in D.C. that kiss babies, cut ribbons, and say, I'm going to just do what's politically popular. We need a president who's going to make the big, tough choices.
All right, I want to talk to you about that, because you say you don't follow the polls, but your critics say that's exactly what you have done in the case of Common Core. Your administration applied 3 times for a grant under President Obama's Race to the Top, and when you finally got it, you bragged about being part of the program. Take a look.
We adopted the Common Core state standards, which will raise expectations for every child.
Then this summer you tried to pull out of Common Core until you were blocked by your own state superintendent of education. I guess the question is, why the flip?
Well, Chris, 2 things. I am still for high standards. Common Core was never supposed to be a top-down government-run approach. I've never been for the federal government making curriculum decisions in Baton Rouge or in any other local classroom.
But why did you apply for and brag about Common Core 2 years ago?
Because it started out, it was supposed to be voluntary standards. This was a bait and switch. Now, look, the Race to the Top was never supposed to be about Common Core, that's why we're suing the federal government. This is a violation of the 10th Amendment of the Constitution. Existing federal law says the federal government shouldn't make curriculum decisions. My argument is Arne Duncan's actually broken federal law in the Race to the Top funding, in the No Child Left Behind waivers, using federal dollars to force states into Common Core. And by the way, I'm still for high standards. I don't want a one-size-fits-all approach coming out of D.C.
But this is a bipartisan program that was started by the governors, not by Washington, and it's not a curriculum. It's a set of standards of skills and knowledge that you have to have at the end of each school year. And critics say that your real objection is that you are considering running for president. Conservatives have turned against Common Core, so you're now with them.
Chris, even the CEO of Park has admitted what gets tested drives curriculum, drives what gets taught in the classroom. I've seen it as a parent. My child's brought home the math homework under Common Core. 2 and 2 used to be 4. Now under Common Core, they made it so complicated. There are a lot of people that have changed their views on Common Core, and they see what it has become. I am for high standards. I am for accountability. If this were truly being driven by the states, and we wrote into our MOU with Park that they had to follow the state bid law, they didn't do that. And that's why we've gone to court. This is becoming a top-down approach, just like Obamacare. We were told you could keep your doctor, you could keep your health plan. We were told this would be locally driven, local curriculum. That's not what it is. This is a one-size-fits-all approach from D.C. We have never allowed the federal government to make curriculum decisions in our local schools.
Governor,
we will continue to fight against this.
Thank you. Thanks for coming in today. We may be seeing a lot more of you in 2015.
Thank you for having me.